Oh my gosh, Dream Think Doers. I am so looking forward to you and us having this conversation because I am talking, barring my wife, we're talking to my best friend in the world. This is a dude that we've had. I think I did the math on his like 700 cups of coffee, all of that. I did the intro in the basically the bumper just so I didn't go 45 minutes. Travis Ensley, welcome back to Dream Think Do.
Hey, thanks, Mitch. It's good to be here. Really, I know this is your thing. Like you like the podcasting. This is terrifying to me, but every time I do it, I enjoy myself and I always get something from it. So thanks
Well,
for
and
having me.
speaking of which, you actually got to be my co-host, which really never happened. But like the episode that's going to drop next week, you came on because we were interviewing Dave Munson, who's the CEO of Saddleback Leather, and you've been a supporter, a fan of their amazing
Oh,
company forever.
I'll tell you what, Dave and what he's doing down there in Texas is incredible. Not just the products that he puts out, but his whole like ethos on life,
Oh my
how he's
gosh.
helping the community, all of those things is
Yeah. That's
inspirational.
Loved it. And what's so funny too, talk about God's perfect timing, because you've been a fan and a supporter of their company forever, which it makes sense because it's incredible. And when you guys hear this episode, you're going to freaking love it. But I brought it to you like, hey, Dave and the company reached out. They'd like to be on the podcast. And you're like, what? And so I invited you to co-host with me. And then lo and behold, I freaking lose my voice. So you guys will hear that next week too, that I am progressively losing my voice more and more. I don't know if you caused that somehow. Maybe you gave me something that morning.
I'm not going to say I didn't.
Literally, I am losing my voice as we go in the episode. So like you already had some great questions you were planning to ask, but you really helped to land the episode. So we'll leave that as a little hanger. You got to check out next week's episode. But yeah, you're like kind of my only co-host. I mean,
Yeah.
Mel's been a guest before, but nobody's ever co-hosted a bill like that. But
Well,
that was fun.
I'm very flattered by that. Like I said, uh, podcasting, not for me, like
Yeah.
from a career perspective,
You're just
but,
being clear. That's not a
yeah,
permanent co-host
it's
thing.
not
You're
very,
not shooting
but
for that.
I'm totally flattered that I got the opportunity and to, I think actually what I said was, hey, if you're going to interview Dave, I'd like to sit in the room quietly and listen
Yes.
is what
Yes.
I said. And you're
Yeah.
like, oh, I can do one better. I'm
I
like,
can
is
do
that
one
better?
better. Exactly
Yeah.
right. Like, get over here. Let's do this
Yeah.
thing, right?
It was great.
It was so much fun. And I also, as I told you this morning when we had coffee, there was 1,000 different directions that we could go with this episode. And by the way, I should back up that part of the reason you agreed to be back on the podcast is you've just your book just got published, which is incredible. We're going to talk about it eventually, called Field of Focus. And that gave me kind of that, hey, come back to the podcast. Come on, man, do it. But as we were talking about all the things we could talk about, I realized you're also pretty much the only guest where we could do an hour and a half episode on all the good advice you've given our sons, for crying
Yeah.
out loud. Like Alex and Ben, you're like an uncle to them. They requested when they both turned 21, like when they both
Yeah.
turned 21, their request was to have their first drink with me and you. And so they got to pick the place that we had the drink. And you often would coach them on what to drink or how to order it, all that stuff. So like, yeah, this is a brotherhood. So there's a
Yeah.
thousand things we could talk about. But as I was thinking about it, as we were talking about it, one of the things that I thought could bring the most value to Dream Think Doers is you truly live one of the most intentional lives. Like you've designed kind of one of the best lives for you. Like you've defined success and you're living it. And I get to interview a lot of people, which is awesome. But I do a ton of research, but I don't know for sure they're living their messaging, right? But you and I have been hanging out and this brotherhood's been, a couple of decades, for crying out loud. So I know you're living it. Not perfectly.
Yeah.
Sometimes it's messy, but you are doing exactly what you're talking about. And I'm like, man, you've got 4 questions that have really, especially as of late, helped you to further design this life of a success that you've defined. And it really has an incredible ripple effect both in your relationships and your marriage and also in your career and all of that. So I'm like, hey, let's just dive into these
Mm.
four questions because these are questions that you use intentionally and annually and probably even quarterly to really help you make decisions, live life, all that stuff. So let's dive into these four questions. Why did you start doing this? Asking yourself these four questions.
Um, well, I think it kind of heralds a little bit back to when I was an executive, we spent a lot of time planning in organizations. We uh, making products or just organizational design development kind of things. And so early on in my career, I was introduced to concepts like key result, like objectives and key results,
Yep.
OKRs.
Yep.
That's what Google has done, or you know. Lots of other strategies and methodologies and frameworks. And I'm a little bit of a nerd that way. I like having a plan. I like making plans. Having a plan is kind of, but I like making the plans and kind of going through that. And so professionally, that was something that I got pretty diligent about. And I think it's important to do in business. But at home, it was one of those things where like, well, why am I not doing something like that for myself? And one thing that my wife and I do, and I will say that my wife Tiffany, she's delightful. She's
You
the
married
best
up.
of us. I did,
There's no doubt.
100%, without question, no question. One thing that that she's held our family accountable to is just understanding what's important to remember every year. So on New Year's Day, we sit down and we talk about the biggest impacts of our life that year. Sometimes we go through our photos, sometimes whatever, and we write them down. It used to was like in a paper log, and now it's in a spreadsheet
There you go.
because
Of
that's
course.
just how it is.
Technology.
Yeah, of course. Uh, but kind of from that is this is what we did. What do we want to do in the future? Like, what are we going to do
Yeah.
this year?
Yeah.
Somewhere along the road, there's lots of ways to kind of articulate that. And somewhere along the road, I kind of came up with these four questions that I started asking myself. And then as I've gone through time with our family, I've started introducing those to my coaching clients as well, which is the first one, which is what's something that I'm really good at that I want to get better at? And I
Yeah.
think that's something that some people really focus on New Year's resolutions. They resolve to stop doing something or
Yeah.
to do something they want to change. And I think it's also important to recognize, like, hey, there's a lot of positive things that happen that you're really good at as a person, and
Yep.
we shouldn't ignore those.
Yep.
Like we should double down on that.
I love that. And I love that it's a very distinct and intentional two-part question.
Yes.
Right? Like the first part, which I think some people are uncomfortable with, is what am I good at? Right? Like some people are very quick to be able to answer that for you. But a lot of people I think don't necessarily they're very quick to inventory their weaknesses, but they're not necessarily quick to inventory and celebrate what they're good at. But then the second part of that question is equally important to say, like, what do I want to get better at? So why are the two parts important?
I think well, one, being from a Midwest family, self promotion isn't something we spend a lot of time talking about, especially
Right?
in certain
Exactly.
generations.
Let's just say that's
Yeah.
frowned upon, right?
Yeah, that's exactly right. Uh, but it's also an important realization, especially if you're trying to get better at something.
Yeah.
Only focusing on negative things takes you down a road of negativity, and I think it's important to appreciate some of the things that we do well. And you don't have to shout it from the rooftops. You don't have to go and make sure everybody knows all the things that you do well. But it's important, I think, for you to reflect on that and to write it down and to think about it. And um, you know, when you because that's very often the direction that you take in life. That's the direction you take with your friends, your family. If you're good at it, then embrace that. It's okay to be good at something. And when you're good at something, just because you're good at it, would that be natural? Like athletes, you see that a lot. Like there's some natural athletes there. What's the first thing? What's the next role that an athlete has? Well, it's a coach. It's somebody to help them get better, even though that they're good. This is where I would reference one of the greatest leaders as a coach of the Chicago Bears, big Bears fan. just want to make sure everybody in the world
Just
knew.
be very, very clear on
Yeah,
this, no matter
yeah.
where we wind up this year.
It's been most of my life that I've never had the opportunity to say this, but I mean, these people are professional athletes, get paid $1 million, and they still have somebody holding them accountable to get better. And not all of us can have coaches every day, helping us do that. Some can, but I think that if we can't do that, then we can do that for ourselves. And the first step in that is to recognize it, write it down, and acknowledge it, and be proud of that.
And I think that is significant. And what I love too is that you do this for yourself first and foremost. And as I said in the bumper, you are now an executive coach. We're working with leaders around the world to helping them, figure out what's the plan for them, what's the plan for their business, and actually achieve those things. But as you coach, you do these things first, which is great. But it's also that thing of being able to say, hey, these are good questions to ask others. Like these are good questions
Yeah,
to ask your spouse. These are good questions to ask, because it's one of those, it's good for us to think and reflect, but for those that we care about, whether that's our family or our good friends or our team, right? It's good to cultivate these things in them as well and really support the value of, continuing to get better, right? Because that is it's easy to kind of get lulled in, especially for the things that we're kind of naturally good at. It's easy to go, well, it's probably the best I can do, so whatever,
yeah,
and that can become boring. So to stretch yourself in the things that you're good at, that's also good. To introduce a little bit of novelty and challenge in those areas that it might be easy to get complacent.
well said. Yes,
Yeah.
exactly right.
I
Exactly
love
right.
it. I love it. So that's question one. When you ask that of loved ones, friends, the clients, where do people get stuck on that question? Where are the little pitfalls with a question like that? Because I know you're working with high level people, people that are already kind of best in their game in a lot of ways. So where do those people? We're not talking schleps here. Like where do those people? They still wrestle with this a little bit.
Yeah, I think mostly it's, well, one, that they become uncomfortable because now we have to talk about something, it feels boastful.
Yeah,
It feels, so once we get them talking about some of the things they think they do, very often we start really small. um, that's kind of where they initially begin. It's like, well, I'm kind of good at, this thing or this thing. I'm like,
yeah.
yeah, and what else? Like, what else? Because in getting them to think a little bit bigger and to understand that it's not just individual contribution things or small um, kind of tasks that they do well. Let's think about your mindset and why you do those things well, and kind of
Ah,
help, like, a lot bigger of, like, because you do this well, you're probably in a role like this. You've seen success because of the things you do well. Let's think a little bit bigger about the way that you think about things, the way that you communicate. Like, what are some of the larger kind of bigger picture things? Because I think that's going to be a lot more telling down the road of what else can you get better at in that way? What kind of skills that you've already formed can you apply to other parts of your role in your life, and et cetera?
I love that. And I agree with you because I tend to work with really successful people too. And kind of the incredibly intricate and incredibly intellectual question of what else?
Yeah.
The two
Yeah.
word like, hey, that's a great
Yeah.
start. What else? Like,
Yeah.
what else are you good at? Is one of the best follow ups. So we'll just put that in everybody's question toolbox.
Yeah.
Great. What else? But when you're assessing, like, even for you or you're helping your clients to kind of figure out where do I want to get, like, how do I want to get better? Like if I'm good at this, how do I want to get better? Like what's one of the ways you figure out a way to do that? Are you, going to YouTube? Are you going to Google? Are you like what are you doing to say, all right, if this is one of the things this year I want to get better at, where do you start with that?
Um, it's going to be different for everybody. I think most people probably, once they get comfortable with the idea that they have permission to think like that. There's probably a few things that they could come up with on their own. I think the trick is the commitment part, and
Mm,
commitment, getting a plan together, and that's a plan is a commitment, and I really struggle with that, especially during discovery. All of this is discover. We're trying to discover the things that we like, the things that we might do, and so instead, I try to help them a little bit with some language that kind of gives them permission, which is instead of let's come up with a plan for that, let's run an experiment.
yep,
Experiment's such a great word because it's so non-committal. Every
yep,
experiment is successful.
yep.
Either it fails and you learn something, or it's successful and you prove a thesis. So getting them to just identify like, hey, you know what? If there was, if this is what you think you're good at, like what are 2 or 3 things that you like, that you think you could experiment with in the next month that would contribute to the value of getting better there? And and they're like, "Oh, I don't have to have like a 20-page, plan for this. I don't have to have a bunch of bullet points. I don't have to have some structure to it. It's simply like, oh, I want to try doing this for a little while. Like, great. What was successful? How do you know if you're getting closer? How do you measure that? Oh, if I measured it this way, like if I felt better, and that's another thing is that feelings can be a form of measurement. We're so hung up on like getting numbers, and which is important for a lot of metrics. Don't get me wrong. If you're looking at revenue, you're looking at any of those things, like numbers are important. But when it comes to like personal development or even professional development in areas that is hard to quantify, you can measure a feeling. Like I
Yep.
feel better about this. I feel
Yep.
like I'm more accomplished.
Yep.
Great.
Yep.
We talk about that.
I love that. I think that's great. And a huge fan of experimenting, especially when I found out that the Webster's dictionary defines hypothesis as
Mm,
a best guess. It's a well-educated guess. So it's like when you experiment, it's like, what's your hypothesis? What do you want to prove or disprove, right? Like, how do you think that might go? So it's to be able to say, all right, are you going to watch a TED talk? Every lunch hour, you're gonna reach out to a couple of people, have coffee, like all those things, or take a class, whatever it is. So I love that. I love that running experiments. What are some experiments you want to try as you're working on this strength? So I love it. All right. So that's question one.
yeah.
Question two.
So remember the time we said like we don't focus on the things we need to we don't do well.
Right.
That's the second question. So there are some things that we know that we need to improve on. There's some things that either we've been told, we got some feedback, or we just know it. Like it's keeping us from moving in a direction we want to go. It's hard. Maybe we don't understand it. Maybe we don't have a support system to help us. So that's the thing. So what's one thing that I'm not good at that I want to get better at? It doesn't have to be a super profound thing. It doesn't have to be, it's just like maybe one thing better is paying attention. That's mine for this year. Like I am stuck like many people with the distractions of the social media, like social media and just the world can, if you let it in, it can distract you. And if I want to be present with my children, if my family, I want my friends, I got to pay attention. I have to focus. I have to prioritize. And that's one thing. So recognizing that, being okay with it. Again, this isn't something you have to share or you have to
Right.
shout from the rooftops.
Yep.
Although I will, most people, if somebody knows you, there's a pretty good chance they know the things that you
Exactly.
don't know.
They can help you out with this,
Yeah,
right?
they
Like
can
they
help
can
you.
help you out with question one. They can help you out with
Yeah,
question two. And I
yeah,
do think it'd probably be good to review. Like this is a great exercise for introspection. This is a great exercise to set you up for visioning. We're doing this January, February timeframe, but you could do this exercise at any time of the year. But what we're talking about here, it is for you and it is for the people that you love. It's for your team, whatever. This is not something you have to put on Facebook. This is not something you have to put on Instagram. Like, and I say that because this doesn't have to be a really wildly public thing. This can be for you for this year. And truly it can be just this rich journey of growth and stretching. And it's not for performance. It's really to improve the quality of your life. So question two really is, all right, what's something I want to work on and kind of, what are some experiments I could
yeah.
run with that?
Yeah,
And so
exactly.
for
Like it's
you, it's one of them is distraction this year.
yeah, for me, that's not something I came up with on January 1st. Like, oh, I
Right.
need to right. It's like, what is it that I'm not doing? And by the way, the list of things that I think I'm not doing well was far longer than the things I thought I
It
was
is
doing right.
easier
Yeah,
generally,
it's super
to come
easy,
up
and
with
that's
this
just
list. Yeah.
yeah.
Now that brings me to my next question. And on this question, which is very meta, right? Questions
Mm,
on questions. But like when we do this exercise, I think this is a powerful thing because we do need to look at our strengths and work on those. But we also need to work on those areas, whether you want to call them weaknesses or growth areas, whatever. And to your point, the growth areas and the weaknesses, that list is easier to write for most people. Um, how do you suggest people saying, all right, I can't work on 20 things at once? This list is long. What's your recommendation as you're working either on your own or with your clients, if they're going to be intentional for 12 months of, hey, this is something I really want to work on, what's realistic? Is it one, two, three, in your opinion?
probably no more than 3. I
Yeah.
think people get really ambitious at the beginning of the year.
Right.
They get really ambitious when they start talking about doing, making a plan. No, like nobody starts a diet on a Tuesday, right? They always got to stick with like, Monday. We'll do this Monday,
But yeah,
and
this is
so
going to be great next week. I'm gonna
yeah,
I'm
next
gonna
week.
it's gonna kill it next week.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So I think one of the biggest things is that when we start getting overzealous about trying to, like, well, here's a bunch of things that I want to get in, and all of a sudden, all of those, it's a big list, and we sit down, we talk about like, here are all the things I want to get better at, here are all the things I want to accomplish. It can lead to a lot of fatigue. It feels a lot of work. It's a lot of work to get better at something. And you have to be intentional about it. You have to spend time on it, and you have to think about it. And it's a competition. You have a pie chart. I talk about this in that book. You have a pie chart, and every slice of that pie chart, as you get older, you get different slices. Or that's a responsibility. It's a responsibility to you. It's a responsibility to your family or whatever. Um, when you add a whole list of things that you want to get better at, or get in any capacity, it's more slices. At some point, you have to make the decision that you have to disappoint someone in that pie chart. Most of the time, it's ourselves. If we're going to sacrifice something, we'll start with the things we care about because we don't have to talk anybody about that. We can decide that. And if you have a big long list of things, of that, like, well, here's like 10 things I want to get better at that I've been told I need to get better at. There's a pretty good chance that when it comes to sacrificing, it's that big list. But if it's one thing or two things, and that's a little bit less commitment, it's a little bit less intimidating. And I think that you're more likely, probably, to say, well, if it's only one thing, I can get better at one thing. I
Yep.
get better at two things.
Yep.
If I have to get better at 10 things, I'm going to start Monday. I'm going to
Probably not.
start
Yeah, that's
next Monday.
that's not gonna happen, right?
Yeah.
Like, but to say, hey, one to two, and these are the ones. Like, and what's beautiful is we're talking about this as a way to look at your year. But I love on this front to say, what's one thing a quarter, right? Like, okay, if it's this year and maybe three or four things for this quarter, I'm really gonna work on this. So I love it. Now you brought up something that I'm like, we were getting to this no matter what, because I mentioned as we started this conversation that you've given Ben and Alex, our sons, some great advice over the years. But one of the pieces of advice that they both hold on to dearly, and has helped them to make some big decisions and navigate some tough seasons in their life, you just briefly touched on, is the idea that from time to time, when you're working on yourself, when you are designing your best life, um, basically, you got to be willing to disappoint someone
Yeah.
because along the way, when you take a step forward, that might disappoint someone. All this. So talk to me because you eloquently drop it in the book as well. This topic is so important.
Mm.
Why is it important to intentionally be willing to disappoint someone?
Because it feels bad. It feels bad. Like,
Right? Right.
It doesn't feel good to disappoint any people at all. It doesn't feel
Yeah.
because it's a form of failure. It's like, oh, I didn't do what I wanted to do. Like there's an
Yep.
intention there. And I think inherently most people have a good intention that they want to do that. And so when you say yes to something, it's a commitment. Yes, I'm going to be employed with you. Yes, I'm going to raise you as a child. Like, yes, I want to be married to you. Like these are all important commitments. And when, especially when somebody reaches out and says, hey, I'd like your help on something. I respect you. Can you help me? You want to say yes. You want to say, yes, I can. And that's another slice. And you do that. And then, you become more successful and there are more opportunities and you want to take opportunities. And so those opportunities, and I talk about it in like, a pie chart. And the pie chart's a finite amount. You have 24 hours in a day. And you have only so many years on the planet. It's the fixed variable there. So you have to choose as you fill up your pie chart. There's only so many hours, and I would often talk to my clients about that. And when they talk about like, I just need to, can you help me figure out how to get more time? Like, I just need more time to be more efficient. And maybe, is there a trick to this? How did you do this? How did like all this stuff? And I kind of say, well, I do have an answer. I have a way that you can make sure that you get those things done. And they're like, really? And then I kind of dramatically lean in a little bit and then they lean in a little bit. And I said, you just do the things that are most important. And they kind of look at me and like, there's always time to do the most important things. That goes to then the really hard thing of now I have to prioritize all of those slices. So that means I have to start saying no to things. And when saying no to somebody means you're going to probably disappoint them. And so it's a recognition of this. If this pie chart is the thing that I'm focused on, and this is the things that matter to me, it's really not about trying to please everybody. It's just being careful who I'm disappointing. And the trick is not to disappoint the same group too often.
That's exactly right. I
You
love it.
you
I'll
sit,
never forget that. Like, I think we were in a discussion, us and Ben and Alex, and at one point we were talking. I can't even remember what sparked it, but you said the quality of your life is directly related to being willing to disappoint someone. And
yeah,
it is like sometimes you have to say no in order to grow. Sometimes you have to say no in order to get those priorities done and to deliver excellence. Sometimes you have to say no in order to be doing more of what you're put on the planet to do. You generally have to say no to somebody. Sometimes it also means no to certain relationships, all that stuff. And that's hard truth, but man, that's deep truth.
yeah, it sucks. Like
Exactly
it does,
right.
and that's unfortunately like that's the part. That's the part about it is it
Yeah.
sucks to have to do that.
Yeah.
Saying no or saying not yet anyway.
Yeah.
That's a better way of saying it. Like not
Right, that's
yet.
a good phrase too, that's a good one to have
Yep.
in your back pocket is
Yeah, it's
sometimes
not a
it's
no. It's a
no,
not yet.
but it's
Yeah.
exactly right, so,
Um,
oh, so good, so good. Alright, let's move on to question 3 because this one's a great one
mm,
and very apropos for today as well. So what's
yes.
question 3?
Question 3 is, so we have the thing that we're good at, we wanna get better at, the thing we're not good at that we wanna get better at, and the one thing that we haven't done yet that scares us.
Yeah,
Doing something that makes you uncomfortable, that you haven't done before, that maybe you've thought about or that you've, been challenged on,
yeah,
and you've said no to. And so, uh, I I think it's important to be uncomfortable. I think when you stop putting yourself in a position of discomfort, then that's where growth kind of starts. And so, in the immortal words of one of the greatest coaches, Ted Lasso,
yes,
says if you're comfortable riding a horse, you're probably doing it wrong. It's discomfort.
yep.
And so I think it's very important to recognize like, all right, I'm going to be uncomfortable with something. Going through just the process and the experience of being uncomfortable with something you're not good at or that you haven't done before, um, really does provide a lot of insights and um, helps that growth happen.
And I love this because, it doesn't have to be quit your job and move to Fiji, right? Like, I mean, if you wanna move to Fiji,
Yeah,
great, but, like,
maybe the first time, maybe not that one.
exactly
Yeah.
right. Like you can work into this, but give me some examples. Like you had a big one this year. Give me some smaller examples of this, like
Um,
leading up to this past year.
Gosh, I don't know, like things in the past. simple things. So being creative, like there's a
Yeah.
lot of folks who are a little bit of afraid to put themselves out there and figure out what they can be creative at. I am not an artistic guy. I don't, I'm not good at art. At least I don't think I'm good at
I was
art,
going to
but
say I would argue, but okay,
yeah.
go ahead.
Well, it depends on how you define, I guess art's maybe everybody can say like, oh, this is a thing. And it's like, yeah, it's
Right.
art. But for me, so the year before last was that I was always intimidated by engineers. I worked in the software industry. Software engineering has been part of it. People who can make physical things, and like knowing all the reasons why all that goes together and all that stuff is just super interesting to me. And I've always been really fascinated. And and because of technology now, I bought a 3D printer, and I said, well, you know what? I'm going to have to learn new software. I'm going to have to learn how like physical objects work in the physical world, and I was uncomfortable with it. It's like I, I want to get good at this, and I had to invest a lot of time and effort in reading and learning, and you see stuff that people do like that, and you're just like, wow, that's commercial quality stuff, and my stuff looks like, well, not commercial quality stuff. But over time you get better at it, and
Right.
and like if I can get to like 80% of that, like I feel like I'm an 80%. If I can get to 80%, I feel pretty
Yeah.
good about that. And so it was uncomfortable, it cost a little bit of money, but over time it's like I'm glad that I did, and it changed the way that I look at objects and things and problem solving and all that stuff.
I
So
love that, and it's fun too because I mean, to bring Ben and Alex, our boys,
yeah.
back into it. Like, Alex had a project this year, and he's like, I think Travis could 3D print this thing. And so he reached
Yeah.
out, you guys worked together on it, and you got this thing which you and I both don't fully understand.
Yeah. It was like a worm or something. I don't know.
Exactly. Hilarious. But like, I mean, you also, I've got a couple of things like I would definitely argue with you that you're not an artist, but like one of the other things that you challenged yourself on was leather working, which is, coming back to our conversation about Dave Munson and his
Mm,
company. Dave's got this incredible leather company, and he makes these incredible works of art that are also briefcases or shoes or all these kinds of things, right? And that was another area where you were like, I'm going to try making stuff with leather. And the first things were not great, but I mean, you've created, that's my wallet, my binder, like incredible art out of leather, and you just challenge yourself to start. And that's just another area where you stretched yourself, which is great.
yes.
Let's jump into this past year though. And you, crazy man, decided to do something you'd never done before, which is what?
I wrote a book.
Wrote a freaking book.
I wrote a book. So dear listener, Mitch here has, he's encouraged me because it's kind of what he does,
Yeah,
probably for 10 years at least,
at least.
to do this. And I have respectfully and often not so respectfully told him, no, like
Yeah.
that's not for me.
Sometimes
Um,
there was an expletive.
yeah, there, or more than one.
Exactly.
And a lot of it was because, I was kind of hung up on the fact that, going to school in high school, I was not a good student. Like um, I learned that there's a learning approach. It's called learning approach, and the way that you choose to learn, and what helps you connect, and people are different. And when I grew up in the 70s and 80s, it was a pretty traditional learning approach. Like it was pretty academic. Like here, you read this book, you take the test. If you pass the test, you're smart, and if you don't, then we read you a slightly lower book, and then we try again and try
Yeah.
again.
You went from the Eagle reading group to the Otter reading group to the yeah.
Exactly. It's like, yeah, it was like animals or like colors or
Yeah, right,
like I don't
exactly.
know,
Yeah, like,
but
I know what you're doing. You're trying not to say anything, but you are very clear. Yeah, exactly.
yes.
Yeah.
There was more pictures in the ones that
That's
and
exactly.
so I had a lot of pictures in my books,
Yeah.
and growing up, and I remember in high school when, I got a D in English, and actually that wasn't an uncommon, thing for me is to get really poor grades, and the, school counselor, brought me aside as we, get close to graduation, and he's like, Travis, I think the trades are for you. Have you ever considered, electrician or plumber? Which I'm looking back, I'm like, gosh, I should have maybe done that. Like that's those
That
guys are killing it right
they're
now,
killing it.
and they
Exactly.
do. It's nothing short of magic. The tradesmen
Yeah.
are underrated. Um, but that's when I joined the service. I'm like, okay, well, plan B is
Yeah.
college is probably not for me.
Yeah.
But I was just not a good student, and to think that I would be able to one put comprehensive words together in sentences, in paragraphs, in pages, and then the audacity that I would have is to put my ideas onto a paper and putting them into a book and then charge people to read my ideas. Like there was just levels of like,
Yes.
nope, 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 not for me. Like it's okay. I don't have to be good at everything. I just don't want to do this. Um, I think though this year that was my thing to be uncomfortable about. And I was reinforced by that by a number of things, both by my friends, my supporters, my faith, all of those things started pointing to like, hey, what now? By the way, it's a lot easier. And there were people in my life who lined up to help me do that. I'm like, okay, I will. But what am I going to do about it? Well, it's going to be something that I have to know about because I'm not going to, science fiction. You can't write something
Right.
I don't know about. Um,
Poetry. Yeah.
poetry. Maybe that's the second book. It's poetry.
Exactly.
Roses are red.
Sequel coming soon. Yeah.
Yeah. Um, and so, what occurred to me is that I, for the last 5 years, have had the honor and opportunity to talk with some of the best leaders I've ever met in a coaching capacity, and I started seeing some themes that turned into trends, and I started paying attention to what those trends were, and kind of just started making some notes. And I have one client. I won't say where he works, but his name's Gary, and he is a brilliant a brilliant guy. And he posed a couple questions to me one time in one of our sessions, and I went back to my notes of things that I've been reading and started to talk to him about some of those things. And that's when I realized, like, oh wow, this might have some impact to somebody other than me. And so I began the process. It was in February
Yeah.
of 2025. Um, just kind of starting to put it together. And, you can learn anything now. Like it's super easy. Like
Right.
there's the inception of what's available for you can, I mean, it's just anything that you want to learn.
I love that. And what I love about that is, and again, the book is Field of Focus. It's a great cover, it's a great design. But and it's a great book, great content. What I love about this as an example though is you ask yourself the hard question, what's something that scares me that I want and could do this year. Uh and what I love about this and the story of the book is first, you had to work through some beliefs, which I think in some cases you could point to evidence, say, well, I didn't do well in school. Therefore, like you could say that evidence is I'm not smart or I'm not a writer. And you had to look at those things not as truths, but to say, okay, this is a piece of evidence, but how do I want to look at those things? Right. So sometimes it's like we always say, like, look at those things that you're holding as truth and saying, is there another way to look at those things? Right. Because I think in some ways you also gave yourself permission to say, all right, maybe because of that, I could give a different perspective. Right. Like, so
Yeah.
sometimes you got to look at those beliefs and say, are those things in fact true? But what I know about the book as well, and if you guys are watching this on YouTube, what's beautiful about this is you also had to give yourself permission to do it a different way. And I think that that's
Yeah.
absolutely true. When people are thinking about something that might scare them, maybe they're going to have to face some things that they thought were true and maybe look at them from a different perspective, but also maybe give themselves permission to do it differently. Whatever that thing might be, is there a way to do it differently? Because I know with the book, like you did not want to put out another 225-page book because that's what publishers say. A business book has to be a certain size, a certain word count, which is absolutely true. Like they talk about, well, if it's a business book, it needs to have a white cover and it needs to, be 225 pages. You're like, what if I did it differently? So like talk about that from the standpoint that it is like when people get it, it's light, it's dense, right? But it looks different. Why was that important?
Um, well, first of all, that's how I learn.
Yeah.
I've read there's a you can't off camera here. There's a bookshelf with a bunch of books of like professional development books that I've used as reference, but
Yeah.
probably have never read all the way through because it's the whole idea of that. I'm not a learner that way. I want to experience it. And there was one time in my life where I it was really important for me to get things right. And so after the I told my counselor that I was not interested in the trades. I joined the service, joined the Navy, and in the service, they have some very specific guidelines on how to do things. They have their way, and you have to know how to do that. And how they teach you that is very effective. I would not recommend it in any other capacity, but
Exactly.
they start with for the Navy called the Blue Jackets Manual, and it's literally a manual. It's a field manual for you to be a sailor. It teaches you all the acronyms. It teaches you all the things you need to do. It teaches you how to fold your clothes and shine your
The
shoes
knots.
and
Yeah.
how to tie how all these knots. Like you
Yep.
have to, and that that book cover to cover. And it's no nonsense. There's not. It's no flowery language. It's written for the lowest common denominator, who was me. Of like, there's some images of like, this is how you do your thing, and like this
Yeah.
is how you fold your shirt, and um, all that stuff. I really appreciate it. I'm like, oh, I get that, and I did that, and I thought, if I'm going to produce anything, um, it's got to be in a format that I can understand, that I would want, and it's kind of a no nonsense approach to stuff. I've been on both sides of that. One is the person who's writing the book, but also the one who's been reading books at a time where I need to have a crucial conversation. I need to get my act together. I need to figure this out. I don't have time to go pick up and read 6 chapters. Like I got to have this
Give me
one-on-one
what
with
I
the person.
need.
Yeah.
Exactly.
And
Yeah.
so that was the idea of that, was I could pick up a book that I got, and go to, this chapter and like, oh, okay, that's delegation. Here's the file. Okay. This is how you do that. Okay. I'm ready for my one-on-one. Now. Let's do this.
Yep. And I love that because I mean, I just looked because I wasn't sure, but like we're talking about, I mean, effectively the book, it's got some notes in it, stuff like that, or pages for notes, but effectively it's 80 pages. Um, but what's interesting is that uh, brevity, it might seem like brevity's easier, right? Shorter. But brevity can actually be more challenging. Like, how do you say what you need to say that's worthwhile, that's impactful, but to actually do it in with less words can sometimes be way more challenging than kind of the 225 page. Nothing wrong with that. My bookshelves are full of them too, all that stuff. But sometimes giving yourself permission to do something differently feels like a little bit more of the risk, but that can be the thing that opens up possibilities. And I love that you leaned into something that you knew, like with those manuals and those field guides to say, you know what? And I remember us talking about it. It's like, I love the idea of the people that I work with having, you know, a collection of field guides for very important tasks, much like you did with the Navy, like to be able to say, hey, I can grab that quick and use it. And I'm freaking proud of you that not only you did it, but you did it with freaking excellence too. So we are going to
Thanks.
actually stay tuned to the conclusion of this episode because we're going to give away 5 of these bad boys. So we'll talk about how we're going to do that. So we'll put a little pin in that and come back to that. But super proud of you, man, because it's great work. And my hope is now it's first of many. So it's just a matter of time where you thought you were done with me talking about this stuff, but now it's the next one. So we'll celebrate that. All right, let's
Thanks.
bring it home. Fourth question. There's like kind of 4 core questions you're asking yourself. What's this fourth question?
So we did something I'm good at that I want to get better at, something I'm not good at that I want to get better at, something that scares me that I want to do, and then something I need to stop.
Boy.
Um, yeah, that,
Oh boy. All
and
right,
it's,
this interview's over. Thanks so much. Yeah, no. Like yeah, I mean this
yeah,
one is so freaking important, but this might for a lot of people including myself be the hardest one, right? So
it really can
talk to
be.
us about this. Like why is it important to explore what in fact we might need to stop doing?
Man, I mean, I don't know for everybody. I'll share like the way I look at that is that for me, it's not a question. Like, I know there's a ton of things I need to stop.
Yeah.
I need to stop doing. But I want to, but I don't want to. I don't want to stop because it either feels good, it's important to me, it's important to somebody else. And you don't want, or something, and this is probably for something I've been doing for a long time.
Yeah.
It doesn't have to be like, if you're a smoker, like stop smoking, like if there's, those
Right.
things, like those are the important things, but it could be like, this can be relationships. Like, man,
Yeah.
I've known this person for 30 years, and not you, but
Right.
I've been known this person for 30 years and it's not healthy.
Yeah.
It's not something, but because I've invested so much time, I think people assume investment equals value.
Yeah.
And there are some times where you're just like, that's not it. And so
Cost fallacy, right? Like
that's
that
right.
whole thing of like, I'm just keeping this going because I've kept it going. Like, no, that's not good. Give us some examples of either for yourself or for your coaching clients, because I think you're exactly right. Sometimes it is the dark stuff of smoking, drinking when I'm not, drinking too much, whatever it might be. But it can actually be good stuff too, right? Things that aren't terrible for you. But what are some examples, big and small, of things that you or your clients, the people you've offered these questions to, what are some examples of things they've stopped doing?
um, I think, well, there's, a few years ago, I don't know if you remember it. There was a pandemic.
Oh, I think I heard
Yeah.
something about it. Yeah,
Right.
exactly. Okay.
And there was a lot of changes in people's lives. We introduced a number of new things that we had to learn how to do. We had to learn how to work from home. We had to learn how to.
Yeah.
I mean, there was a time, if you remember, like we were wiping our groceries off, like that was a thing. And looking back, it kind of feels silly, but at the time it was terrifying. Like it was just
Terrifying, right?
there was so many things. But during that time, there was horrible things, like terrible things that happened during that
Right.
time. But there was also some really positive things that came out of that. But then times changed again.
Yeah.
And I think there's a lot of folks that I've talked to that kind of want to hold on to some of that stuff. Some of it is healthy, some of it's not healthy.
Right.
And I think that in some instances, it's like, well, I work at home. And because I work at home, maybe, the things that I do that I used to, I didn't have to go out. I didn't have to, get dressed. I didn't have to do all that stuff. And because of that, like now I don't have like my relationships aren't as good. Like I'm maybe not as invested as I used to be. And I will say this for myself, I spend a lot of time in this box right here, um,
Yep.
by
That's your
myself.
day job, right?
Yep,
That's your
it
day
is.
job. Yep.
I sit here in the same kind of configuration and I talk and have some active listening and all that stuff. And it's pretty easy to get used to your own
Yep.
things,
Yep.
your own, you start, there's an echo chamber of what is true. And so, to stop, uh, thinking that, you know, that this is the only space, or to be able to stop a process or a behavior, to say,
Yeah.
you know what, I think I'm going to go and actually re-engage with society.
Yeah, right?
Because if I didn't, I don't have to, like
Yep.
I don't, I
Yep.
have my little circle, right? And I have like 34 people I interact with, my family who lives here. I don't have to leave the house if I don't want to. And that's, I know that it's easy. It feels good. The longer I stay, the better it feels. Like I don't have
Right.
to do this,
Exactly. Yeah.
right? But I have to make a conscious choice. Like, you know what? That's not okay. I need to stop this thought process. I need to stop this kind of behavior. What am I going to do then? Okay, I'm gonna work remotely. I'm going to volunteer someplace to force that function. Add another slice to my pie, but that's okay because that's something I'm choosing to do.
Yeah, I love this. And I think this is great because this is a good question to inventory and again set yourself up for a better year, but quarter to quarter, like how you might answer this question can evolve, right? And it might be for some, like it could be something as specific as to say, "Hey, I'm not going to spend as much time on social media or I'm going to take a break from social media or I'm going to stop eating this type of food or whatever, and run some experiments on this." But I think you're exactly right. It could be just as importantly, maybe even more importantly, about mindset and
Yeah,
how we live. And I know you said we could go anywhere, but like to your point, like it's easy because I do the same thing. My office is above our 3-car garage attached to our house. So like man, as an introvert, like this is the bomb, right? But I got
Yeah.
to force myself to say, all right, how am I still getting out in the world? How am I, I still go and speak and do events, and God's great sense of humor is I'm an introvert, but my part of my day job is spending rooms, the time in rooms with 500 to, 2000 strangers or whatever, all that stuff. But you're taking this as a part of this year, you took this question to heart, and a part of you stopping something was doing something like pretty incredible road trip adventure where you and your bride are gonna work out in the world. Like this is amazing. So I love that this is like, let's talk through that just a little bit so people can get an idea, because this is not just saying, all right, I'm gonna put my phone away and not scroll. It's like, hey, what do you want to stop doing and how can you replace that? So talk a little bit about where this question has led you to an adventure that you guys are going to take.
Yeah. So I want to qualify this with, it doesn't have to mean what I'm doing.
Major life change.
Yeah.
Exactly. You
Start
have built
start
up to
small.
this. Right.
Yeah.
You have built up to this. This is not you moving to Fiji, but in some ways this is a version of a more extended or extreme example of saying, all right, what am I going to say no to, and what am I going to replace it with? So, yeah,
Yeah.
walk us through this
Well,
adventure a little bit.
this is something that I think a lot of people do. Like
Yep.
I'm not unique in this, but for my wife and I, like we have two beautiful daughters, and Delaney and Devin, and both of them are older now. They're out of the house, and they're actively pursuing their lives and
Yeah.
careers and things like that. And
They've
so
launched. Yeah.
we've launched, and in case you're wondering, it is as great as you think it would be. My wife and I are also now still young enough to where we can go and do some of these things. And so we decided, like, hey, a lot of people, like, well, when I retire, I'm going to get, this thing. We're going to get a second home. We're going to, get the RV. We're going to do all these things. And that was on my list too. I'm like, when I retire, I want to go do this. But what came uh, clear to me is that, uh, why do I have to wait? Like, what's the rules? I think one important component of this whole conversation is it occurred to me that there isn't rules. We have imposed some on ourselves. Other people have imposed them on us, and I would really challenge anybody to really think about what is actually true from a rules perspective.
Yeah.
Um, it's not easy. Like we've had to make a lot of choices. We've had to make some sacrifices. We've had to have a lot of hard conversations, but our choice was like, hey, we're going to run an experiment this year. We're going to spend 5 weeks traveling, ideally somewhere much warmer
Yeah.
than the
Exactly. The
Midwest where
timing
we
of
live.
this is critical. Yes.
Yeah, it's important. But also we want to see adventure. We want to see places and meet
Yeah.
people and do things. I don't want to wait until, in my 60s or when I'm,
Yeah.
you know, things aren't looking like I'm going to live forever. Come to find out, like, so I want to do it as soon as I can. And so
Yeah.
we've made some choices and made some changes in our lifestyle. And you know, moving from an executive into a coaching role was this was the long game of like,
Yep.
how can I work from the road?
Yep.
How can I be in charge of my own income and my own kind of things? And so, um, it takes a lot of planning and thought and some direction, but that's kind of what some of these questions you ask yourself over time that you kind of build towards that. And so for the first time, my wife and I, we're gonna work from the road. We're gonna get into our trailer. We bought a bigger RV. We bought a bigger truck to pull it with. Um, in per opinion for a pound. And so we are committed to that.
Right.
And so, but I mean, we having to figure it out, and that's part of it. I think a lot of people who look at adventure, feels like a vacation because that's what social media looks like. But really, adventure is like, man, I'm going to get a flat tire on this trip. I'm going to run into weather. I'm going to be in a situation where we have to make adjustments, and that's part of the whole experience that I want to have. And I say that now, and I'm going to come back in like 6 months and be like, hey, remember that time? Not something I wanted, but but I don't know. And that's the
But
thing is
that's
like,
the
I don't know.
experiment, right? Like,
That's the
that's
experiment. Yeah.
absolutely the experiment, and I do, like, having a front row seat to a lot of the experiments that led up to this. You guys have sacrificed a lot. You've had a lot of smaller experiments. You've had to kind of hone and craft your life into something that, allows you to do that, but I think you and I talk about this, and we've talked about it even recently, that I think, our culture is a permission based culture. We have to so often, especially as we're growing up, wait till somebody gives us permission, whether it's getting invited to go to a school or getting invited to be on a team or getting invited to be a part of a club. We have to wait for somebody to give us permission. And what's beautiful about this, just to your point, is especially as we grow, especially as we stretch and try new things, we realize that actually we don't really have to wait for somebody to give us permission to do a lot of the things we'd like to do, or especially if we design our life, we don't have to wait for somebody to say, "All right, you can come," or "You're the one." Like, we can just do it, and that's what you guys have done. Is you've given yourself permission to go have this adventure. It's taken some work, some sacrifice, and yeah, like there's probably going to be some absolutely amazing moments. There's going to be some messy moments, some hard moments, but like that's a part of it. And you're living a life. This is what I talked about when we introed. Like, you are living a life of intention, that I think a lot of people long for. So I wanted to give a little bit of the playbook, the behind the scenes of how did this happen? How did this happen? To get you to this point. So we'll probably have to have you back, and maybe we should have Tiffany on for that one, to share a little bit about that upcoming experiment a little bit. But I think you guys know it's like a part of the richness is the good, the bad, the ugly, and everything in between.
Absolutely. And that is, I think that's, you have to be kind of okay with that.
Yeah.
And I will say also, we've both, both given each other permission. So first of all, I did have to ask permission of Tiffany. That was permission
Yeah,
that
you guys
needed
are
to
in
be.
this together. Yep.
Yeah, we are like, is this a thing? She's like, no. And I'm like,
Yeah,
please. And she's like,
exactly. Let me ask a question differently. Yeah.
yeah. But we both committed to the fact that if this is not what we expect or want, one of us can pull, the eject handle anytime. I think that's also part of it too, is that it's an experiment. If the experiments don't aren't working out, that's okay. But try. We're trying, and that's, I think, the important part.
That's the beauty of it. Like, when you're experimenting, there is no failure as long as you're moving forward. Like we talked about, the scientist says, "Hey, as long as I'm learning, even if my hypothesis doesn't go the way I thought, if I'm learning, that's moving forward." Right? And so I know the experiment is going to be rich. So I love it. All right. So I'm going to ask you one last question, and then I'm going to give you a second because I'm going to do a little bit of a commercial. You won't need a second, but I'm going to ask you. So the question is, as a dream think doer has been listening, they're thinking about these four questions. What's one last piece of wisdom or tidbit to help them take that step and start to ask themselves these four questions to set themselves up for an amazing year and an incredible life behind that? So I'm gonna ask that question, put a pin in it, and now I'm gonna do a commercial. So shh, right? So think. All right, we've been talking with Travis Ensley. Obviously an amazing human, one of my favorite humans absolutely on the planet. His brand new book is called Field of Focus, a field guide for navigating time, teams, and technology. I love right on the cover, he brings some promises that he does fulfill. That is practical strategies, durable ideas, completely BS free. That's what I'm talking about. And he lives up to that. So you're going to want to grab a copy. Books are available at fieldoffocus.com, or you can go right to Amazon and buy those bad boys and have them immediately. You're going to love it. It's going to be something you want to have on your shelf, use, and give it to your teams, to your teenagers at home, all that stuff. So, all right, that's the commercial. Did I make you uncomfortable?
Yes. Thank you.
I love it.
Yes.
Yes, absolutely. So bring us home, man. What's one last piece of wisdom that somebody might need to start asking themselves these questions and take action on them?
You don't have to have it figured out. You don't have to do all the questions. You don't have to have. There's no timeline for these. Um, I think if you want to start with one, I would say just start now. Just get started. Just ask a question, write it down. Um, there's no pressure, and nobody has to know. Just
Yeah.
get started.
I love it. And it's true. And what I love about this is, I mean, you could probably do this in 45 minutes at your favorite coffee shop or in a comfortable chair, or you could just take one question at a time. Each one of these questions, guys, that we've talked about, obviously, are really important questions that will lead you to rich outcome, especially if you start experimenting. And that's what we talk about all the time. It's dream, think, do, right? It's say, hey, dream bigger, think about the life that you want to have, the things you want to achieve, but then think, actually put a plan together, at least figure out that next step. What's your hypothesis? But then the do is critical. Start taking action. So, Travis, my man, thank you for being the brother that's helped me to dream bigger, think better, and do more of
Yeah.
all this messy, fun, crazy stuff. I appreciate you greatly. And thanks so much for writing the book, but also being on the show again.
It is my pleasure, and thank you, because if you weren't, I'm going to say, supporting me for so long,
Pushing can also be
as much as you do in the way that you do, we probably wouldn't be in having this conversation. So I really appreciate you too. Thanks, man.